Hi, grade 10s. I'd like to apologize for not being with you today. I am right now on my way to Winnipeg to see my uncle's funeral. He passed away just before school started. So I will be back on Monday. In the meantime, you'll have to put up with my voice. So what we're going to do today is we're going to look at the Pythagorean theorem. And it should be a review of what you did in grade 9. But in case you didn't do it in grade 9, let's learn it today. In any right triangle, there's a relationship between the sides of the triangle. The animation below will show this. So let me bring up the animation here. There it is. So you got C is the hypotenuse of the triangle, the longest side of the triangle. And what we see here is by making four triangles, we've made a square of area c squared. So the whole thing has an area of c squared. And as we move the triangles around, the whole area is still c squared. Right? So now what we're going to do is we're going to see that this area here is a squared. This area here is b squared. So if the whole area is c squared, then a squared plus b squared must give us c squared. And that is the Pythagorean theorem. I really like this animation. And I'm going to let it play one more time for you. I really like this animation and how it shows why the Pythagorean theorem works. Okay? Now, if you don't necessarily understand it, don't worry. All you have to know is how to use the Pythagorean theorem. That's all. Alright? So, let's get started then. Alright, there's your a squared. There's your b squared. And it gives you c squared. Awesome. Okay, now, let's move on. We did say that Pythagorean theorem is c squared is equal to a squared plus b squared. C is always the side across from the right angle. The right angle is right here, so this is your c. C is also what we call the hypotenuse, which is written below, and the hypotenuse is always the largest side of the triangle. So c squared is equal to a squared plus b squared. Now, let's use that formula and try and do these examples. Okay? So, example, find the unknown side of the triangle, write your answers to the nearest tenth. Some of these questions will not work out nicely. We are going to have to use a calculator to find the answers. So, we know the formula is c squared equals a squared plus b squared. I always like to start by writing down that formula so that I can remember it and not have to look back at my notes all the time. So c squared is equal to a squared plus b squared. Now c is across from the right angle. Now the right angle is right here, so this is our c. So we don't know c. So c squared is equal to a squared. It doesn't matter which one's a and which one's b. I'll call this one a and I'll call this one b. So that's 8 squared plus 15 squared. So c squared is 64 plus 225. And now we're going to add those together, and that gives us 289. Just a quick recap in case you forgot. When we take 8 squared and get 64, what we're doing, 8 squared means 8 times itself. So 8 times 8 is 64. And likewise, 15 squared means 15 times 15. And that gives us 225. I know that in the summer, I forgot a lot of math. So just being the first day of school, you might have forgotten some math. So I just wanted to remind you what squaring a number means. Now, we get 289 is equal to c squared. Now, to find out what c is, we take the square root of 289. And if you're using one of the calculators that are provided to you from the school in class, we would type in 289, and then we would hit the shift button, which is at the very top left of the calculator, and 2 buttons over, there's a button that has this, but because we use the shift, we are actually using the square root command, which is this one right here. Okay, so 289 shift square root, and you'll see that the answer for the value of c is 17. 17 what? Footballs, hamburgers, hand grenades? No, the units are centimeters. So C is 17 centimeters. Okay? Now, moving on to the next example. But before we do that, I should clear up something that sometimes students ask. And you might ask me once I get back too, but I'll tell you now. Sometimes I get asked, do we have to show all that work? Yes, you have to show all that work. Okay? When you show your work in math, that is most of what I look for when I mark your work. The answer is only a small part of it. I need to see your work. I need to see how you arrived at your answer. By you showing your work, you're telling me what you thought and how you thought. So it's very important for you to show your work. Now here's another example. Question B. We have a right triangle with sides 8 and 5. So again, C is going to be the side that we don't know. So we write down the formula. C squared is equal to A squared plus B squared. C squared is what we're looking for, so we don't know that. But we know that A, we'll call this one A again, and this B. A is 8, so 8 squared, plus B, which is 5 squared. And 8 squared, 8 times 8 gives us 64. 5 squared is 25. So if we add those two together, we get 89. Another thing that we usually do in math, just to keep things neat, tidy, and all that jazz, is that when we write down equations or stuff, we make sure the equal signs are all lined up nice so that your teacher can read your work clearly and be able to see what you're thinking clearly. So if you can do that, it would be greatly appreciated. Now, C squared is 89, so C is going to be the square root of 89. So once again, we type in the number, shift square root, and this one is not a nice number. It says to the nearest tenth. So what we get is we get like 9.43398, blah, 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 blah. If we're rounding to the nearest tenth, that means that we're rounding to one decimal place. So we look at the number directly to the right of it. If it's 5 or greater, it would bump the 4 up, but it's not. So it keeps that 4 a 4, so we get C equals 9.4 centimeters. So that is the length of the hypotenuse in the second question. Okay? The first two examples we did, in both of them, we were looking for the hypotenuse. We're not always going to be looking for the hypotenuse. Sometimes we will, sometimes we won't. Let's do an example or two where we don't. Now, oh, my bad. First we'll do this example here. And that is a ramp is 4 meters long and 0.9 meters high. Draw the ramp and find the length of the ramp. So when it comes to a word problem, there's an old saying that says, picture's worth 1,000 words. And pictures usually help us visualize what we're looking at in a problem. So it says it's 4 meters long. So maybe it's something like this. And I'm going to get rid of that kind of piece there. And it says it's 0.9 meters high. Okay, so obviously I can't read. I did the high part first, so I'm going to do the length part now. And then I'm going to just join those together, and I'll delete this little piece here. So I drew the ramp, and I guess then what I'll do is I will draw, that doesn't matter here. Let me just draw, this would be the ramp right here. And that would be our right angle. Okay, so I know that this would be 0.9 meters. This would be 4 meters. So to find the length of the ramp, I'm going to use Pythagorean theorem, and I'm going to look for the largest side, the hypotenuse again. So I jumped the gun a bit. We are going to do some examples where we know the hypotenuse, and we're going to look for one of the other sides, but we're going to do a word problem first where we are looking for the hypotenuse. So, again, lead off with the formula. C squared is A squared plus B squared. So C squared is 4 squared plus 0.9 squared. And that's going to give us C squared is 16 plus 0.81. C squared is 16.81. So to find out the length of the ramp, we're going to take the square root of 16.81. And if we do that, we get an exact answer of 4.1 meters. So the ramp is going to be 4.1 meters in length. Okay? And usually when we do a word problem, we should make a therefore statement and conclude our findings. So therefore, we should answer the question. So the question is find the length of the ramp. So therefore, the length of the ramp is 4.1 meters long. There, we answered the question, and now we're done. Okay, let's do a couple examples where we know the hypotenuse. So, again, we know that the hypotenuse is across from the right angle. The right angle would be right here, so that means this would be C. This could be A or B, the 5, so I'll call it A, and this is B. So we're going to use the Pythagorean theorem, and we're going to solve for B. So, C squared equals A squared plus B squared. C is 13, so 13 squared is A squared, so that's 5 squared plus B squared. 13 squared is 169. 5 squared is 25, and that's just B squared. So, to find out what B is, we need to solve for B. And recall in grade 9, when we solve an equation, we get that letter by itself. So we're going to try and get that B by itself. Right now, though, we have that 25 on the same side of the equal sign. So we have to bring the 25 over to the left side. So 169 minus 25 is B squared. 144 is B squared. So to find out the value of B, we take the square root of 144. So use our calculators and we get 12 centimeters. So that unknown side B is exactly 12 centimeters. 12 times 12 is 144. So the square root of 144 is 12. Okay? So if we know the hypotenuse, these questions are a little dicier because we have to take a number here and we have to bring it over to the other side. And of course, when we bring it over, it becomes negative, and then we subtract, and we get the 144, and then we take the square root. So there's a little bit more involved in a question like this. Not a lot, but just a little bit. And our last example, and that's homework time. So again, let's find out where that right angle lives. That right angle is going to be right here. And this is our C, this is our A, this would be our B. And we write the formula down. C squared is A squared plus B squared. C is 32. So 32 squared is A, which is 8 squared, plus B. We don't know B, so that's B squared. Now 32 squared. Use your calculator for that. Well, I don't have to, but you probably do. 32 squared is 1024. 8 squared, 64. B squared, still B squared. So let's bring the 64 over to the left side. And of course, when we do that, it becomes negative. So 1024 minus 64 is 960. That's B squared. Sorry. So to find the value of B, we take the square root of 960. So 960 shift square root, and we get 30.98386, blah, blah, blah. If we round that to one decimal place, it'll be 31.0, because that 8 bumps that 9 up to a 0, which bumps that 0 up to a 1. So 31.0 centimeters is the length of side B, the unknown side in the triangle. Okay, so it is homework time. You're going to be getting a worksheet. Try and do as much as a worksheet as you can, and there will be a homework check on this when I get back on Monday.